back in the pub, and this time it is the most epic Mexican lager VS battle that we've ever done. I might be the only Mexican lager VS battle that we've ever done, I think, but it is still the most epic one. We are taking two probably of the most easy to find Mexican lagers for me here in Canada. I'd imagine for you in the US as well. From what I've done, my travels down in the South where you live, buddy, I think these are two of the most common ones as well. Of course, there's only like maybe 4 or 5 big brands, but these two are finally going to go head to head under the umbrella of a beer brackets VS battle, which is the ultimate fight to death.
It is
venue
for beer.
It's the Roman Colosseum of beer battles.
That's what it is.
We like to say.
That's what it is.
We imagine it to be. Modelo Especial. If there is a Hall of Fame on the Beer Brackets channel, I think Modelo Especial would be in there for sure. It's had so many great moments on the Beer Brackets channel, and it is back going head to head against the recently reviewed Dos Equis Mexican lager. Buddy, do you have a feeling of where this is going to go?
I've learned over the years that you might have feelings, but you never know. If I had to just pure, feeling, I'd say I'm probably going to lean Modelo, but I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. You never know.
Well, you got to clear your mind. You don't want any kind of like beer preemptive thoughts moving in there and maybe influencing yourself, right?
That's true.
You don't want to.
That's true.
You want to come in with a clear beer slate, buddy. Normally you would think, I don't know, with the clear bottles, this was an open 6-pack that I bought. There's very zero skunkiness on this particular, on the Dos Equis, and we just did the review and you didn't note any either, which is interesting. So I'm not sure if the bottle color is going to play in here in terms of characteristics that we're going to be noting on the two. But if you haven't watched a VS battle before from Beer Brackets, we go over our 5 review elements. So we talk about aroma, taste, and mouthfeel, finish, and overall beer experience. We give a point for each. So there are 10 points up for grabs. And the winner, of course, is the one with the most points at the end of the beer battle. But let's crack these beers and let's see which one comes out on top. This is going to be good. I haven't had a Modelo in a long time, just in general, so I'm excited about this.
It's going to be epic, man. It's going to be absolutely epic.
Pour out this Dos Equis first. There it is. That's that very distinctive, what we discovered is a very distinctive aroma.
Right?
It's interesting. If you haven't watched the review of Dos Equis that we posted very recently, go back and check it out. There were some very interesting notes that we discovered on it that we didn't expect. And I'm very curious to see how those are going to factor in.
Interesting.
But we will find out. I'll make sure these beers are nice and visible here. That's better.
All right.
I'm always trying to find the right beer positioning here, but I think I found it.
Cheers. Aroma cheers.
Which of these two do you prefer? Ooh.
That Dos Equis has that unique, it's so distinct. Oh yeah, there's I don't know about yours, man, but in my Modelo there's a little bit of skunkiness.
I didn't remember it being this skunky. That's interesting.
So there's definitely a little skunkiness, more skunkiness than on the Dos Equis. There's none on the Dos Equis, at least I can't detect it. Aside from that, there's a very rich malt character on the Modelo Especial. Dos Equis is more like that faint, I described it as a piadina, a flour tortilla, something very, very light. And there's a little bit more of a hop presence on the Modelo. I think I'm going to stick with Modelo, my friend, so far. Even if it has the skunkiness, I think it somehow adds a little bit more character. Modelo is what I would take a sip off first.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. Which one wants you to go in and take a sip more, right? Like the Dos Equis has that very sort of distinctive, interesting characteristic, that profile to it, like the malt sweetness, kind of very concentrated malt sweetness, and a floral kind of hoppiness, but very light. And even though the Modelo has that skunkiness, still very nice and crackery and malty, but it's balanced in a very Modelo way, right? It smells like a Modelo. It's very distinctive. Yeah, I'm going Modelo too, buddy.
There you go.
2-0 to start off with. Cheers. Let's go in for a taste. This one's going to be interesting. What do you think?
Cheers.
Ooh. Right. Okay. The beers are speaking to me. They're telling me many beer stories.
It's a tough one.
This is going to be tough.
This is going to be a tough one.
Yeah, this is a tough choice. You going in for another reading? You diving in?
Because there's an element that I can't quite pinpoint. If I had to differentiate those two, I would say that the Modelo Especial comes in a little bit at a higher volume. Dos Equis is a little bit more subdued, more mild overall. So keep that in mind. So it that might factor into also what your preference is as far as like what you're looking for. I think the Modelo Especial plays a little bit more on the malt presence, while the Dos Equis has this very subtle, almost like hint to leaning more towards the hops. But I'm sticking with Modelo, my friend. I really like the way that malt presence comes through and just carries the talk, even if it's a little louder.
If you watched our review of Dos Equis again, we talked about like that kind of like sweetness that's there, and I really like that. Even though it's kind of like, it seems like it's a processed sweetness, maybe derived from some kind of like corn syrup adjunct. I'm not too sure. I like it in this one. It's done well. Normally it's kind of like concentrated malty sweetness that I don't like in this kind of like macro beer, but it works. It works for me. And even though the Modelo is delicious as well, I think I'm going to go with the Dos Equis on the taste. I think it's just a little bit more deep, a little bit more complex. So 3-1 for Modelo through two categories, my friend. Now the mouthfeel. Beer bracket tradition. We got to do a little bit of a refresher, pour some more beer in to refresh that mouthfeel to get an accurate reading on our beers. Let's see if Dos Equis can catch up, make a game out of it. It's only down by 2. It's not that far behind.
Still catch up.
All right, let's take our readings.
All right, let's do it. I think one on this especially comes down to the carbonation level. I don't know about you and about the ones you're having, but in the review of the Dos Equis, we talked about how the carbonation was like a little lacking on this, and maybe it's just a variation that we have. Whatever is happening there to me is a little still lacking here in this comparison. The Modelo has a little bit more of their carbonation. Right. And I think that just makes it a more pleasant experience when you just focus on the mouthfeel. So again, I'm sticking with Modelo so far. What do you think?
Bit of a landslide for Modelo here so far, man. 4-1.
It has, yeah.
Which was kind of expected coming into it. I mean, after reviewing them, even if you just take like the review scores aside and compare the two, I mean, yeah, there's just not enough carbonation on the Dos Equis. I would love more of a presence there on the mouthfeel. Just because Modelo has a presence. Forget all the other characteristics, just because it's there and you can feel it. Yeah. It's taking the point for sure. So, man, so 5-1 for Modelo through 3 categories. So at this point, Dos Equis can just hope for a tie. It's got to get the finish and the overall beer experience. But we didn't appreciate the finish too much on the review. But let's see. Which one do you prefer?
The finish is, again, interesting on both. Because I think those beers are really meant to be paired with food. So I think the finish is a little bit tricky to be judged like on their own. But because we must, and we have taken on this task, like I will say that the Modelo has a more malty presence and less sweet. There is a little bit more of a play in between the elements in the finish of the Modelo. So I think I'm going to stick with that. Tough here.
It's kind of like a no contest. I think there's like this sourness on the Dos Equis that I'm not a fan of, and some sweet sort of like processed maltiness. But then on the Modelo, it feels much fresher. It just tastes like higher quality. It's hard to put into better words than that. So on the Modelo, there's hoppiness.
I like that.
Hoppiness. Definitely some hoppiness on there. A little bit of like crackery crunch on there, but I think it's crackery crunch. I'm just nailing the descriptors today. This is fun.
Crackery crunch.
But
I love it.
Definitely Modelo. 7-1. I mean, okay, it's obviously a victory for Modelo, but as an overall beer experience, buddy, from beginning to end, which one do you think is superior?
I want to say this in defense of the Dos Equis.
I love your closing statements. Your closing beer statements are the best. It's always like the president going up to the podium and doing his final address to the people. It's great.
Oh, that's so kind of you.
It's always so eloquent and well said. You summarize everything perfectly with a nice bow.
It's so kind, my friend. Like you're always so too kind. I don't
You're
know.
very
Like,
statesman-like.
well, that's why it's such a pleasure to be here, because we get an opportunity to discuss those things.
Always a pleasure.
What I wanted to say is that like I feel bad for the Dos Equis for one reason, because like if you just like landing on this and you're seeing it, you said, oh yeah, clearly Modelo is better, but the Dos Equis has like some very unique characteristics that quite surprised me in the review, and still surprise me now, like every time I've been taking a sip. And specifically that, I can't quite pinpoint it, but the way it showcases the malt character, to me, is very, very unique. Now,
It is, yeah. Definitely is.
Is that enough on its own to say like, oh, I would want to go for that? That's a question that is a personal question. So I invite you to try it out yourself and see. For me, I think it's still like leaning towards the Modelo. I think I have to be honest. Now that I've tried them, analyzed them, I would still go with the Modelo. What do you think, my friend?
You know, at their base, these are very sort of simplistic beers. Mexican lagers in general are. So there's not too much to say, but from the overall beer experience from beginning to end, it's got to be Modelo. From the moment you crack a bottle, Modelo is very distinct, right? Like the aroma. It is. And I said this when we did the VS battle, the can versus bottle, and it's insanely enjoyable from beginning to end. Even though it's subtle, it's recognizable, it's relatively unique. As much as you could say a Mexican lager is unique, it's very, very, very enjoyable from beginning to end. I never am disappointed with a Modelo. There's never anything to pick apart. There's never anything to nitpick on. So this was a landslide, 9-1 victory for Modelo Especial over Dos Equis. Everybody, let us know down below, which one of these two do you prefer? Are there any other Mexican lager battles that you'd like us to do moving forward? This one was kind of like a little bit of a squash match here, but let us know if there are any others you'd like to see down below. Whatever you do, click that beer bell, because it'll let you know. YouTube will let you know when you're in the pub, and you can join us and you can have a beer along with us, or you can just watch. You don't have to have a beer along with us. Just hang out with us in the pub.
Hang out with us, and no matter what, don't forget to close your beer brackets.
Cheers, everybody. We'll see you next time.